John, we have a former judge joining us. But when he had the urge to legislate, he did not do so from the bench. Instead, he ran for Congress. That would be Representative Ted Poe, that Republican from Texas, a member not only of the Judiciary Committee, but for our purposes today, the Committee on Foreign Affairs. He is the chairman of the Subcommittee on Terrorism. Ted, we welcome you back for day two, because there is just so much going on here that we need you to weigh in on it. And we thank you.
It's good to talk to all y'all.
Well, thanks a bunch. And Ted, as we take a look at this, before we get to what's going on in the Middle East with terrorism and what may be permeating our borders, let's go to that other border story as the immigration judges say the caseload is too heavy, and the White House says, give us more money so we can process more of these cases. Drill down for us here. These are administrative law judges, are they not? This is not a traditional courtroom setting, is it?
Well, some of the judges, yes, some of them are. Some of them are magistrates that are appointed for temporary duty. But JD, what is missing in all of this is the House of Representatives. In July, before we recessed, we passed a border security bill that included more immigration judges and funded immigration judges. In that bill, of course, was toughening the border and having more border security. But we provided for the very thing that the president is saying that we did not do. The problem was, as it has been in this whole Congress, is that the bill, including the bill that eliminates the deferred action, is sitting in the Senate along with about 375 other bills that have passed the House, and Harry Reid and the Senate are not going to take the bill up. So the president's wrong when he says that the House has not acted. It's that the Senate hadn't acted. So he wants to use the excuse that the Senate hasn't acted to impose unconstitutional rules, laws on the country. And so we did provide for immigration judges and magistrates. We do need more of those so we can expedite the removal of people who have come to the United States illegally. And we've done that.
All right. Well, let's take a look at our parent website, newsmax.com. There's a story saying what we've just been talking about, what you mentioned. Mr. Obama is trying to play this blame it on Congress strategy for basically going toward amnesty via executive orders. You would offer a friendly amendment to that headline saying if the president wanted to be accurate, it would be blame it on Harry Reid and the Senate for not taking up your bill.
That's exactly correct. And plus, the Constitution, J.D., as we all know, does not give the president authority to act if Congress doesn't act. That law, the Constitution doesn't provide for that anyway. But the House has acted on this very issue. But the Senate is, the siesta Senate just refuses to vote on anything.
Well, speaking of the Senate, Ted, we are getting word that the junior senator from Florida, Marco Rubio, perhaps reflecting back on his own involvement in the Gang of Eight, now says we need to shut down the government if the president tries to grant amnesty to illegals. Josh Earnest is saying the president is not going to back down on this. He took up this issue in yesterday's press briefing. Let's take a listen to what Josh Earnest had to say.
If Republicans were to engage in an effort to shut down the government over a common sense solution like that. But they've done it before. Hopefully they won't do it again.
So, Ted, your reaction to what Josh Earnest said?
Well, first of all, the Republicans did not shut down the government before. We got the blame with the state media, the national media, but the House actually passed legislation to fund portions of the government, but not all portions of the government, and we sent that to the Senate. It did not vote. So it's not true that the Republicans shut the government down. The Senate shut government down. The Senate shut the government down. So I think in the House there's going to be the debate whether or not we fund these unlawful actions of the president or not. But we will continue to fund other portions of the government. So It gets a little technical, but to say that the Republicans are shutting the government down is not true, even though that's what happened. We got the blame for that before.
Well, but this is, perhaps there's a new dynamic here, because I went through that my first term in the Congress when we were at loggerheads with then President Clinton, and there was a similar government shutdown. The blame was, oh, the Republicans shut down the government. You guys got a taste of that in the not too distant past, but that may not be perceived as such a bad thing if it's saying, oh, wait a minute, we're not going to let a president illegally engage in issuing amnesty. Is that a risk prior to a midterm election that you and other congressional Republicans are willing to take on?
That is a risk, and I think that is the position the president wants to put Congress in. Exactly, the political position he wants to put the Congress in, and I expect that he will go forward with his pen and phone legislating from the White House instead of the Congress to pass or to do some type of thing that's illegal. Then Congress will have to have and should have the debate as to whether or not we're going to allow the president to violate the Constitution. The power of the purse is in the House. We ought to exercise the power of the purse and the refusal to give money for unlawful and unconstitutional actions on the part of the president.
Ted, this all purse and funding, and when you take a look at your home state with the number of illegal minors who have crossed that border, now because of a Supreme Court decision, Plyler v. Doe, we have to educate those children regardless of their immigration status. That's the way the law has been interpreted. Have you been hearing from superintendents of school districts in your congressional district about, hey, this is going to be a huge burden in terms of funding for the illegal kids who are going to show up in school?
Yes, I've heard that, as have other members of Congress, and not just from superintendents, but from the teachers in the classroom and parents in the school districts that have their own kids in the schools. Because all of this funding, the cost, is the responsibility of local communities and the state of Texas. It is a tremendous cost. And when people have come into the United States, minors, of course, the Supreme Court says no matter if you're in the United States, you get an education at taxpayer expense. And it is becoming very expensive. And many of these folks do not contribute back to pay for the education. Their parents don't pay for the education that they receive, and so it's a tremendous burden. Schools are hurting already. It's tough enough to educate people who are lawfully here and American citizens, and now they have the extra burden of educating people who are in the United States unlawfully, but yet they have that constitutional right to say at the Supreme Court.
Only about a minute remains in this particular portion of our program, Ted. A quick reaction, ICE owning up to the fact that they have released almost 200 felons. I believe some of those felons at least have been involved in killing Americans. What's your reaction to the news that ICE has owned up to releasing these felons?
Well, of course, it's not good. I mean, the release period is the fact that these folks will cause more harm in the future. That's the way I see it.
All right, Ted, we're going to ask you to stay with us, as we mentioned earlier, because not only the border in our national security, but what is happening abroad. So in addition to Ted Poe, we will be joined by former spymaster Jack Devine for an world that is straight ahead as we continue here on America's Forum.